Hello and welcome to the Sacred Truth channel. Today I want to take you on a reflection that can completely change the way you understand your spiritual life, because there is an expression that many repeat. Many hear, many even believe they live by. But few truly understand it in depth, and that expression is abiding in Christ. And perhaps you have heard this before, perhaps you have read it in a verse, perhaps you have listened to a sermon, but the question that really matters is, do you understand what this means in practice? In everyday life, in the way you think, feel and make decisions? Because abiding in Christ is not something superficial. It is not a beautiful concept to admire. It is a reality that confronts, that demands, that transforms, and that completely separates those who merely believe from those who truly live it. Because see, there is a silent but extremely profound difference between knowing about Christ and being connected to Him, between talking about faith and living by faith, between attending spiritual environments and being spiritually aligned. And this difference is exactly where many are deceived, because they create an illusion of closeness. They believe they are on the right path just because they maintain certain habits or practices, but deep down, they remain disconnected, still living guided by their own impulses, still making decisions based on what they feel in the moment and not on the truth they claim to follow. And this is where the expression abide gains a weight that few are prepared to carry. Because abiding is not passive, it is not automatic, it does not happen by chance. Abiding is a continuous, conscious choice, and often uncomfortable. Abiding in Christ means living in constant connection. It means aligning your mind with the truth even when your thoughts try to take you another way. It means aligning your emotions even when they seem to scream louder than reason. It means making decisions that reflect principles rather than impulses. And this requires discipline, requires maturity, requires a level of awareness that is uncommon, because most people live on autopilot, react to life instead of living intentionally, go with the flow instead of questioning the direction. And in this state, abiding in Christ becomes almost impossible, because there is no vigilance, no depth, no real surrender. And perhaps you have never stopped to think about it so directly. But the truth is that abiding in Christ will confront you in areas you prefer to ignore, will expose contradictions within you, will show you that it is not enough to simply say you believe. It is not enough to only feel something in specific moments. It is not enough to seek only when you need. Because abiding is constancy. It is continuity. It is faithfulness to the truth even when no one is watching, even when there is no emotion involved, even when everything inside you wants to take an easier path. And it is precisely because of this that many give up, because abiding requires renunciation, requires letting go of things that seem good at the moment, but which ultimately pull you away from what is right, requires saying no to desires that seem harmless, but which gradually weaken your connection. And here is a point that changes everything. Abiding in Christ is not about perfection, it is about direction. It is not about never failing, but about not accepting to live disconnected, not accepting to live divided, not accepting to live merely reacting to life without awareness. It is about recognizing when you have strayed and having the humility to return. It is about noticing when your thoughts are misaligned and choosing to correct them. It is about feeling internal conflict and still deciding for what is right. Because true transformation does not happen in extraordinary moments. It happens in the small daily decisions, in the details that no one sees, in the silent choices that over time build who you truly are. And the more you abide, the more you notice that something begins to change within you, not superficially but in a real, deep, and consistent way. Your way of thinking changes. Your way of reacting changes. What once dominated you begins to lose power. What once seemed impossible to resist no longer holds the same influence. And this does not happen because you became stronger alone, but because the connection began to bear fruit. And these fruits are not only external, not only visible, they are internal, structural, they are what sustain your life when everything around tries to destabilize you. But it is important to understand that this journey is not easy, because living connected in a world that constantly pulls you in the opposite direction requires constant vigilance, requires firm decisions, requires the courage to be different when everyone around you follows the easier path, requires the strength to abide when everything inside you wants to give up. And it is precisely in these moments that your connection is tested. Not when everything is fine, not when it is convenient, but when it is hard, when it is uncomfortable, when it demands from you something you would rather not give. And it is there that it is revealed who is truly abiding, and who only believed they were. And perhaps, if you are honest with yourself right now, you will realize that there are areas in your life where you are not abiding, areas where you are merely following your own ways, justifying your choices, ignoring inner signals that show you something is not right. And this is not to condemn you, but to awaken you, because recognizing this is the first step to change. It is the first step to leave autopilot. It is the first step to live with more awareness, more intention, more truth. Because in the end, abiding in Christ is not just about spirituality. It is about identity. It is about who you become over time. It is about the person you are building in silence. It is about the legacy you are forming with your daily choices. And this construction does not happen neutrally. It is always going in some direction. Either you are strengthening yourself in the truth, or you are drifting away from it. There is no real middle ground. There is no neutrality when it comes to connection. Either you are abiding, or you are slowly disconnecting. And that is why this message is so important, because it does not allow you to get comfortable. It does not let you just hear and move on as if nothing happened. It calls you to responsibility. It calls you to awareness. It calls you to make a real choice. Not tomorrow, not when it is more convenient, but now, because every moment is an opportunity to align, to correct, to abide. And ignoring this is choosing to remain in the same place. So the final question is not whether you understood what it means to abide in Christ. The question is whether you are willing to live it for real. Whether you are willing to leave autopilot, to face your own conflicts, to let go of what pulls you away, to choose the truth even when it costs. Because this is what defines everything. Not what you say, not what you feel, but what you choose when no one is watching. And if you decide to abide truly with awareness, with intention, with courage, then prepare yourself, because your life will change, not superficially, but completely, deeply, irreversibly. Because abiding in Christ does not just change what you do. It changes who you are. It changes how you see the world. It changes how you live every day. And now when we talk about abiding in Christ, we need to understand that this abiding is not just a practice, not just a habit, not simply saying beautiful words or attending spiritual places. Abiding is entering a level of awareness where every fiber of your being is examined, where every impulse is questioned, where every decision, no matter how small, carries the weight of fidelity or disconnection. And this is not something you learn once and that's it. Abiding in Christ is a continuous journey of self-knowledge, discipline, renunciation, and courage. Because at every moment you are tested, at every moment the world tries to pull you off the path. At every moment you face the temptation to prioritize comfort, safety, and momentary pleasure instead of eternal truth. Abiding in Christ also means understanding that the deepest struggle is not out there, It is not in circumstances. It is not in others, but within you. It is facing your own desires, your own thoughts, your own impulses that try to convince you that the easier way is acceptable, that what seems wrong can be tolerated, that the truth can be relativized. And it is in this silent, invisible confrontation, unseen by the eyes of the world, that true faithfulness is revealed. It is in this place that character is built. It is in this inner silence that the soul is strengthened. It is in this intimate confrontation that the connection with Christ becomes indestructible, because abiding is not when everything is easy. Abiding is when the whole world seems to conspire against you, and yet you choose to align with the truth. And that is exactly why many confuse appearance with reality, appearance with truth, because it is much easier to seem connected than to really be. It is much easier to repeat words than to live principles. It is much easier to follow traditions than to take responsibility for every thought and every action. But abiding in Christ does not care about appearances. It is not satisfied with the surface. It is not content with the minimum one can do without effort. Abiding in Christ requires the courage to strip away illusions, the courage to face your own mistakes, the courage to admit weakness, the courage to renounce what you love when it conflicts with the truth. And this courage does not come from impulse. It does not come from temporary motivation. It does not come from fleeting enthusiasm. It comes from conscious decision, sustained by daily commitment, and it grows stronger every time you choose truth over convenience. And at this point, it is essential to understand that abiding in Christ is not just about the present. It is not just about what you do now, but about who you are becoming over time. Every choice you make, every decision you take, every resistance you exercise shapes you internally. And this shaping is not visible instantly. It cannot be measured by immediate results. It is not celebrated by others, but it is real, deep, structural. Abiding is building a foundation that cannot be shaken by life's storms. It is forming roots that sustain you even when everything around seems to collapse. It is creating an internal center of stability, an identity that does not break in the face of circumstances, but strengthens through them. It is a silent transformation, invisible but absolutely real and irreversible. And here is another powerful truth. Abiding in Christ requires intimacy with the Word, but not in a superficial sense, not as if it were mere theoretical knowledge or mechanical reading. It is letting yourself be shaped by it, allowing each verse, each principle, each truth to penetrate every layer of your being, letting it reconfigure your thinking, your emotions, your priorities, your worldview. Because true connection with Christ is not only spiritual, not only emotional, it is structural. It redefines you from the inside out, and what was once normal becomes secondary. What was once urgent loses priority. What once dominated you becomes subject to the light of truth. And it is in this deep restructuring that life begins to bear fruits not only for you, but for everyone around you. Because abiding in Christ transforms you into a presence of stability, clarity, and purpose in the world. And we must also speak about moments of weakness, because abiding does not mean the absence of falling. It does not mean perfection. It does not mean never failing. Abiding means recognizing the fall and deciding to rise. Abiding means facing shame, fear, doubt, and still choosing to move forward. Abiding means seeking internal reconciliation, even when everything inside resists. Abiding means looking at your own mistakes and seeing in them not a reason to give up, but an opportunity for learning, growth, and deepening the connection. Because it is in the fall that faith is revealed. It is in resistance that commitment is proven. It is in challenge that fidelity is strengthened. Without difficulty, without resistance, without internal confrontations. Abiding would be just an empty word, an idea without weight, a concept that does not transform. And as you continue on this path, you realize something even deeper. Abiding in Christ is not an isolated act. It is not a performance for others. It is not a routine to be fulfilled. Abiding is a progressive transformation that redefines your perception of everything, of your relationships, your goals, your challenges, your joys and pains. You begin to realize that the small decisions that once seemed insignificant have immense power over your life. You begin to realize that your thoughts are not neutral. Your emotions are not neutral. Your words are not neutral. Everything carries impact, and abiding in Christ means taking responsibility for each of these dimensions, not as a burden, but as an expression of freedom and truth. Because true freedom is only found in the discipline of faithfulness, in conscious surrender, in the constant decision to live aligned with what is eternal. And perhaps the deepest of all is to understand that abiding in Christ is not just about you. Every act of faithfulness reverberates. Every conscious choice transforms environments, influences people, creates effects you cannot measure, but that are real. Abiding is becoming a channel of stability in the midst of chaos. It is radiating a presence of truth where there is confusion. It is living as a silent testimony that connection with Christ produces tangible, lasting and transformative results. And these results are not superficial, not immediate, not easy to measure. They reveal themselves over time in consistency, in resilience, in integrity, in the ability to maintain direction when all signs around point to distraction, doubt, or deviation. And then we reach a crucial point. Abiding in Christ is a radical choice. It is choosing full life instead of spiritual mediocrity. It is choosing truth instead of illusion. It is choosing renunciation instead of conformity. It is choosing eternity instead of temporariness. It is understanding that every moment is an opportunity for alignment, that every thought is a test, that every decision is a silent battle that decides who you will be not only today, but tomorrow and for eternity. It is understanding that what you build internally cannot be taken away by external circumstances, that what you cultivate in the intimacy of your heart produces visible fruits, and that abiding is not optional for those who desire to truly live, but is absolutely necessary. And if you are willing to embrace this, to accept the challenge, to dive into this journey of awareness, renunciation, and faithfulness, then prepare to experience a transformation that is not superficial, not fleeting, not dependent on special moments or temporary emotions. Prepare to live so that every decision, every thought, every word, every action becomes an expression of who you are in Christ. Prepare to realize that life can be different, not because the world changed, but because you changed. Because true connection with Christ begins to shape you from the inside out, making it impossible to remain the same. Because in the end, abiding in Christ is this: a continuous journey of surrender, courage, and deep transformation. It is a call to absolute awareness, daily responsibility, and faithfulness that transcends circumstances, emotions, and natural tendencies. And it is on this path that you finally discover true freedom, true peace, true strength, not the strength of the body, not the strength of the mind, but the strength of a life structured on eternal truth, in the constant presence of Christ, in the silent fidelity that builds, transforms, and perpetuates. And if you decide to walk this path, prepare yourself, because nothing will be superficial anymore. Nothing will be temporary anymore. Nothing will be small anymore. Everything within you will begin to resonate with eternity, and you will realize that abiding is not a concept. It is not an ideal. It is not a distant goal. Abiding is life itself in its truest, most intense and transformative form.